Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. All right, big story coming out this week. We've had a lot of big, good stories this week. One coming out of North Carolina, where they overturned a law that's been on the books, well, since Jim Crow days. And I don't want to steal their thunder because, you know, I'm reminded of Al Davis, the owner, I think it was the Oakland Raiders. He said, just win, baby. That's it. Just win. And you talk about a guy that knows how to win. Joins us right now. Paul Vallone is the president of Grassroots North Carolina, and he is a guy that has been winning for a long time. Paul, welcome and congratulations.
Tom, you flatter you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So for those who don't know, tee this up. Tell them what this law was, what it did, and where it came from.
Well, basically, we just passed Senate Bill 41, which does essentially three things. It repeals our Jim Crow-era pistol purchase permit system from 1919, which allowed sheriffs to arbitrarily deny gun purchases to applicants. It expands our concealed carry in churches to include churches that sponsor schools. Under North Carolina law right now, church carry is legal unless your church sponsors a school, in which case it becomes educational property where carrying a firearm is a felony. So that will change on December 1st. As a matter of fact, it was pretty ironic to hear some of the anti-gunners tell us that we were tone deaf because we passed this law just after the Nashville shootings. But the reality is that this law is intended to protect exactly the type of church which sponsors a school that was the unfortunate tragedy occurred in Nashville.
Right.
And then
exactly.
The third part of the bill is a relatively benign educational safety awareness initiative that has no force in law. It's just an education program. But
right, if you would let me say this, because there may be people who don't know what we're talking about. When we say this law, it requires you to get a permit or get the approval of the local law enforcement officer in order to buy a handgun, that being Jim Crow. What that really was about was, how are we going to keep black people from having guns? That's what that was about.
Exactly right, because after Reconstruction, the Democrats, frankly, took control back of the southern states and started passing laws to keep blacks from voting and using the same restaurants and facilities that whites used, and, of course, from owning guns. Mm-hmm. But thanks to the passage of the 14th Amendment, they couldn't say it was about race in the statute, so it had to at least ostensibly be about something else. In this case, it required the clerk of superior court to determine whether or not the applicant was of good moral character, which, of course, in 1919 meant you were white. Because right. we have newspaper clippings that say that most of the permits granted were granted to whites. It's just a matter of record. Yeah,
right, and the weird part is, go ahead.
I wound up having to fight the NAACP on this. The NAACP and other black organizations were actually fighting to retain a Jim Crow law, if you can believe that.
That's what puzzles me, is they know that that's what it was. It's not like there's any mystery here. Everybody was open about what it was about, and what this law was about was being able to pick and choose who got to buy a handgun, and we know what that was about, and the fact that you've got the organization NAACP and other organizations saying, we support laws that were designed to be racist, it just shows how far in the tank they are for gun control.
Exactly right. And I mean, let's face it, they really, and we've actually got evidence that blacks are being disproportionately denied permits even today in one particular county where it was studied. And yet they deny all of this because, of course, the key is that they want power and control, and the best way to do that is to disarm people.
Okay, Paul, so you not only got this law passed, but then the governor vetoed the law. And this is where it gets very interesting, because you are an experienced political operative, and I say that with only high admiration, because it is not easy to get something like that done, and to get a veto overridden is amazing. How did you do it?
We started by winning the 2022 elections. Everybody else talks about the red ripple across the country and how the red wave didn't materialize. Well, it did for us. And it did for us because we put in a very significant and organized election effort to make sure that we created a supermajority that could override Roy Cooper's veto.
Huh.
So the reality is we started winning this thing last November. And we did it by distributing 150,000 voter guides covering all the candidates across the state, by using a political action committee to run independent expenditures, mailings, radio spots, email, obviously, peer-to-peer texting, and a brand new tool we introduced called geofencing, where we delivered 1.7 million political messages and candidate endorsements to people's mobile devices.
Wow.
So this was a very sophisticated election effort. And that's what, of course, paid off. We wound up with a supermajority in the North Carolina Senate, 30 out of 50 seats, requires 6/10. And we wound up only one seat shy in the North Carolina House. We had 71 out of 120 instead of 72. But, of course, that made it a little bit tricky in the North Carolina House. We did get some Democrats who voted with us, at least the first time around. The difficult part, of course, is getting them to vote to override the veto of their own Democrat governor.
And you were smart enough to figure out a way to get them to abstain, so they didn't vote against the governor, but they didn't vote for him either.
That's correct. 3 of them did not vote at all. One of them, who claimed he was going to vote with us, actually lied and voted against us. That would be Shelley Willingham. And then Michael Ray, Tricia Cotham, and I forget his Cecil Brockman. All took a walk and didn't vote, and they're taking a lot of heat from their own party at this point in time.
I'm looking at this, Paul, and I think obviously this is a huge win for gun rights in North Carolina. But more than that, I would offer this up to everybody around the country of this is how it gets done, and it's not easy. I mean, that's what I'd like for people to understand is you can't just all of a sudden jump up and go win these. You have to be in the fight all the time and thinking, what are we going to need to do next year? What are we going to need to do in 3 years from now? And how do we start now to make sure we win 3 years from now? It's not easy, is it?
No, that's quite true. Actually, Roy Cooper has been a thorn in our side for more than 25 years. He killed my bills when he was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He passed anti-gun laws when he was Attorney General, and he vetoed 3 of our bills when he became governor. And we didn't have a veto-proof supermajority. So we have spent basically 25 years building organization and building it in order to make sure that we could defeat people like Roy Cooper.
Where does it come from, and I'm going to get a little bit more personal here, to have the fire it takes to say, I'm in this every day for as long as it takes, and if that's 20 years or 25 years, I'm going to be in it? Because as far as I can tell, that's the only way we end up winning this. Where does that come from? Where do you get that?
Well, the flippant answer is any day I can deliver pain to a leftist can't be all bad. But anyways, that said, it stems from a deep sense of justice and wanting to see the right thing done. And quite frankly, when you see politicians that lie, cheat, steal, and worst of all, take people's rights, that just incenses me, and I just have to do something about it. Grassroots North Carolina is all volunteer. None of our people gets paid for what they're doing. They take time from their families, their jobs, their vacations, and everything else, and we basically kick tail.
All right, I'm going to pick this up, and I got to do this before I let you go. If people want to know how to do this, how it works, how you get the right mindset, how you win, they need to get a copy, and you did not ask me to do this. They need to get a copy of your book, Rules for Anti-Radicals, a Practical Handbook for Defeating Leftism by Paul Vallone. The book is Rules for Anti-Radicals. And I'm just going to tell you, if you want to know how to do this, how to build your coalition, how to put it together, how it works, how you win, and Paul, ultimately, that's what matters. It's how do we win, right?
You are exactly right, and I thank you for bringing that up again. I know last year we had an extensive interview on that, and I was so thrilled that you liked the book, because that's exactly what it is. It's a playbook on how to win. All right, it's 30 years of tactics that I have used, I went out looking for a book for tactics to teach my people, and I couldn't really find one. I found books of philosophy and whatnot, but not one of tactics. So I wrote it. And, of course, people can get it at rulesforantiradicals.com. Rulesforantiradicals.com.
It's available if you want to do it through Amazon. It's available there. It's available a lot of different places. But I would just say this: if you're at all serious, or if you just are even interested about this, I think you would find it interesting, fascinating reading, and it may be the impetus to say, okay, I'm going to get off my butt and I'm going to go get things done. Paul, congratulations on this, and thank you so much for writing this book for the rest of us.
No, I thank you for having me, sir, and for getting the word out.
Absolutely. Paul Vallone from Grassroots, North Carolina. The book is Rules for Anti-Radicals, a practical handbook for defeating leftism. I highly recommend that you grab a copy of this.